It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon, the kind where nothing bad ever happens. Michelle Lee, a bright 26-year-old nursing student, walked into the hospital parking garage with her keys in hand and a weekend trip on her mind. The air was still, fluorescent lights flickering above rows of silent cars. Her footsteps echoed through the concrete. Then, nothing. Minutes later, her white SUV pulled out of the garage and disappeared into the city traffic. But the person behind the wheel wasn't Michelle. By nightfall, her phone was dark, her coat still hanging in the break room. Friends thought maybe she'd left early. Police thought maybe she'd gone somewhere to clear her head. But Michelle's family knew better. Something was wrong. What they didn't know was that someone had been watching her for weeks. Someone who wanted her gone. So what really happened in that silent parking lot? And how far will jealousy go before it turns to murder? Michelle Lee wasn't the kind of person who made enemies. She was the one you'd call when your world fell apart. Calm, kind, always there with a quiet smile that made things feel okay again. She grew up in San Diego, in a house that never slept. Laughter, noise, cousins running through the hallways, the smell of her mom's cooking drifting from the kitchen. That was Michelle's world. Her mother, a nurse, was her hero. She healed people for a living. When she passed away, Michelle made a promise. She'd pick up where her mother left off. That promise became her obsession. She fought for 5 long years to get into nursing school, never once letting go of the dream. When she finally got in, she treated every day like a gift. Long shifts, sleepless nights, all for that single moment she'd wear her scrubs and say, "I made it." Everyone loved her. Her brother Michael said she had this strange, unshakable peace about her, the kind that made you believe nothing bad could ever happen around her. She taught her cousins to drive, helped them cook, listened when they were lost. She carried the family's weight on her shoulders without ever showing the strain. But the truth is, people like Michelle, the ones who shine the brightest, they cast the darkest shadows. In the weeks before she vanished, that light began to attract something twisted. Someone who watched her from afar, convinced that Michelle had taken something that didn't belong to her. She had no idea that behind the smiles and the daily routine, jealousy was slowly taking shape. Quiet, patient, waiting for its chance. Michelle thought she was walking toward her future that day in the parking garage, but she was walking straight into someone else's madness. May 27th, 2011, the day the ordinary turned on itself. For the nursing students at Kaiser Permanente's maternity ward in Hayward, it was the last shift of their rotation, the moment they'd been waiting for. Everyone was joking about weekend plans, taking selfies, saying goodbye to the ward that had become a second home. Michelle Lee was there too, smiling, exhausted, ready for freedom. She was planning to drive to Reno that night. Just 1 more hour, she told herself. At 6:55 p.m., Michelle told her instructor she was running to her car to grab something. She left her coat and her bag on a chair. Little promises that she'd be right back. The security camera caught her crossing the concrete floor of the 3rd-level parking garage. Fluorescent lights hummed above her, casting long shadows between the cars. She moved with her usual calm, but halfway to her Honda CR-V, she slowed down, tilted her head. Something, or someone, made her pause. Then she turned out of frame, and that was it. 17 minutes later, the same camera recorded her SUV rolling out of the garage. The brake lights glowed, steady, unhurried. The vehicle merged into traffic and disappeared. No panic, no screeching tires, just control. Too much control. At 9 o'clock, the ward wrapped up for the night. Students signed their sheets, said their goodbyes. Everyone, except Michelle. Her coat still hung on its hook. Her phone went unanswered. Her instructor felt that first twinge of fear, the kind that starts small and won't leave. Together with security, she checked the garage. The echo of their footsteps came back at them. Nothing. Empty rows of cars. Then, headlights. Michelle's white SUV crept back up the ramp, its engine purring softly. Relief hit for half a second, until the driver ignored the instructor's waves. The car paused, like it was thinking. Then it reversed, turned hard, moving towards home, and sped away into the night. That was the moment everything shifted from worry to terror. By morning, police were combing through the lot. They found small traces of blood near where her car had been parked. Faint, but enough to stop every conversation cold. Hours later, they discovered the SUV abandoned near an apartment complex. The doors were locked, the interior almost too neat. Michelle's bag and laptop were still inside, along with an ID badge that didn't belong to her. everywhere. One reported stolen days earlier, and then came the messages. Texts from Michelle's number, "I'm okay." Another, "Just needed a break." Then, "My phone's dying." Different stories for different people, none of them sounding like her. Her brother said it immediately. "That's not Michelle." Detectives agreed. The words felt wrong, like someone was trying too hard to sound calm. They weren't reassurance, they were camouflage. Someone was buying time. The search widened. Helicopters, dogs, volunteers, hundreds of people looking for a girl who had always been the one helping everyone else. But in the middle of all that noise, one image stayed burned into every investigator's mind. A grainy frame of video, a white SUV rolling back into the garage, headlights cutting through the dark. Someone was behind the wheel. But it wasn't Michelle Lee. The first 24 hours after Michelle vanished felt like a fever dream. Her friends and classmates flooded the Hayward Police Department with calls, each one saying the same thing: Michelle would never just disappear. But the text messages told a different story, or at least they tried to. At 9:12 that night, her brother Michael's phone buzzed. "I'm okay," the message read. A few minutes later, "I'm not missing. My phone's acting up." The punctuation, the phrasing, none of it sounded like her. Then came more messages. One saying her tire was flat, another that she'd driven to Reno early, a third that she needed a break from Facebook. The lies came fast and disjointed, like someone trying to build a version of Michelle out of scraps. Police traced the signals. The phone was moving, but not toward Reno. It was circling the bay. Someone was carrying it, turning it on long enough to send a text before shutting it off again. By morning, the search had become a storm. Volunteers printed flyers, search dogs combed the hills. At the same time, detectives began mapping every minute of her last known movements. The stolen ID found in her car became their first clue. It belonged to a woman who'd reported her badge missing a few days before Michelle disappeared. Whoever took it had been near the hospital, possibly even inside. While officers traced hospital logs and camera footage, the Lee family tried to keep hope alive. Michael told reporters his sister wouldn't leave without a word. "She was supposed to come home that night," he said. "She always comes home." His voice cracked when he said it. 2 days later, police received another call. Someone posing as Michelle had phoned the hospital's emergency room right after she vanished, asking to speak with her instructor. The woman said her child's father had suffered a heart attack and begged them to relay the message. The voice didn't sound like Michelle's, but it was close enough to fool a stranger. Detectives began looking at everyone in Michelle's circle: classmates, co-workers, anyone with a grudge or obsession. One name kept coming up: Giselle Esteban. Giselle had once been Michelle's friend. They'd met years earlier, even lived together for a time. But something had broken between them. Giselle's ex, a man named Scott, had dated Michelle briefly after the breakup. The relationship ended amicably, but Giselle never let it go. She began sending angry messages, first to Scott, then to Michelle. When police questioned her, Giselle didn't hide her resentment. She said Michelle had betrayed her. She was calm, almost detached, claiming she'd been at the hospital for a pregnancy checkup the night Michelle disappeared. It sounded rehearsed. As detectives dug deeper, the calm cracked. Scott handed over a series of texts he'd saved. Furious, erratic messages from Giselle. "I hope you find what you're looking for in someone as disgusting as her. She won't be a problem much longer. You can take that to the grave." Then came the recording. Scott had captured one of their fights on his phone. In it, Giselle's voice was low and shaking with rage. "If you do it again, this is your last and final chance. I'm going to kill you and her." Her daughter could be heard crying in the background. When police heard it, the room went silent. They learned Giselle had been hospitalized for a psychiatric evaluation months earlier, diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She'd shown up at Scott's house uninvited, sitting quietly in the dark until someone found her. When Scott finally obtained a restraining order, Giselle's behavior spiraled further. The order was granted 3 days before Michelle disappeared. Detectives returned to the stolen ID lead. Hospital access logs showed the badge had been used the day before Michelle vanished. Security footage confirmed it was Giselle. She'd walked the halls in a white lab coat, studying schedules, testing locked doors, watching where students parked. She wasn't lost, she was planning. The search for Michelle had now turned into a homicide investigation. Blood found in her car matched hers, and the steering wheel, the place a driver's hands would be, carried a different DNA profile, Giselle's. As investigators confronted her again, Giselle stuck to her story. She insisted she had nothing to do with Michelle's disappearance, that she'd gone home after her appointment, but phone records told otherwise. Her cell pinged from towers near the hospital that night, then near the area where Michelle's car was found. To the family, every new detail felt like a bruise. Michael spoke at one of the volunteer briefings, voice hoarse from sleepless nights. "If anyone knows where my sister is, please, please tell us." Behind him, posters with Michelle's smiling face flapped in the wind. Meanwhile, police placed a tracker on Giselle's car. They watched her movements, followed her routine. She returned to familiar streets again and again, including one belonging to Scott. Surveillance later showed her car, parked outside his house, multiple times, just sitting there, engine running. Then another twist. Scott called detectives, his voice shaking. He'd found Michelle's phone in the backseat of his car. The evidence was closing in like a noose. But one question still haunted everyone. If Giselle had taken Michelle, where was she now? And more chilling still, why was Michelle's blood inside her car? And Giselle Esteban's DNA on the steering wheel. Giselle Esteban used to call Michelle Lee her best friend. But by 2011, that friendship had rotted into something darker, something poisonous. To Michelle, Giselle was a classmate, a sister figure. To Giselle, Michelle had become the enemy. It started small, quiet jealousy, whispers, tension. Michelle had once dated Giselle's ex, Scott, for a short time. It ended quickly, no drama, no sparks left behind. But in Giselle's mind, it never ended. It festered. Every text between Michelle and Scott was proof. Every smile, every coincidence, twisted into evidence of betrayal. And the thing about obsession, it doesn't explode all at once. It builds. First came the messages, hundreds of them, angry, desperate, pleading. Then came the threats. "You think you can just take him from me? You won't pass your midterms. You'll see." Scott tried to block her. He begged her to stop. He even recorded one of her rants, a chilling, calm voice, promising, "If you do it again, this is your last chance. I will kill you and her. You can take that to the grave." That wasn't a figure of speech. When she finally lost custody of her daughter, Giselle snapped. Court papers, restraining orders, psychiatric evaluations, all confirmed what everyone around her had started to fear. Her reality was cracking. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, manic depression, and delusional tendencies. But she didn't see it as an illness. She saw it as a conspiracy. In her mind, Michelle had ruined everything. Her home, her relationship, her identity. So Giselle started planning. Police later uncovered what she'd been searching online. How to cause a heart attack quietly. How to follow someone without being seen. How long does it take to suffocate? She even stole a hospital ID, not just any badge, but one that gave her access to restricted areas. She was spotted wandering the halls in a lab coat, pretending to be a student, memorizing schedules, names, and dismissal times. It wasn't rage anymore, it was strategy. For weeks, she watched Michelle. She knew when she'd park, where she'd walk, when she'd be alone. And then came May 27th, the night she decided to end it. Maybe she wanted to scare her, maybe she wanted to make her beg, but obsession has no brakes. By the time the garage went silent, Giselle's jealousy had turned into murder. Afterward, she didn't panic. She performed. She sent the texts. She moved the car. She acted like nothing happened, like she'd finally won. But in trying to erase Michelle, she left behind the one thing she couldn't fake, her own DNA. Her hair inside Michelle's car, Michelle's blood on her shoes, her fingerprints on the steering wheel. The truth was closing in, and the only question left was, how far would she go to hide the body? And when the garage went silent, when Michelle's car disappeared into the night and Giselle walked away, she thought she'd gotten away with it. But obsession leaves footprints, and detectives were about to follow every single one. They started small, tracing her movements, her calls, her lies. Then came the GPS tracker, quietly placed under her car. Each drive, each stop, each hour, mapped out like the pages of a confession. confession. Her roots told a story, one she didn't mean to tell. She kept circling Scott Street, night after night, parking outside, watching. Then one night, Scott made a chilling discovery. In the backseat of his car was a phone, not his, Michelle's. Police rushed to pull footage from neighborhood cameras, and there it was, Giselle's car, idling just down the street, lights off, the same night that phone appeared. She had planted it there, trying to frame someone, to twist the story one last time. From that moment, everything unraveled. Detectives dove into her digital trail, text logs, phone records, cell tower data, and there it was again. The night Michelle vanished, their phones moved together, the same route, the same timeline. Giselle's phone followed Michelle's, all the way to Hayward, then to a quiet area near Giselle's home. After that, Michelle's signal went dark. The next day, Giselle walked into an Apple store, calm, smiling, holding Michelle's phone. She told the clerk her daughter had accidentally locked it. Security footage caught every second. Minutes later, she sat at a restaurant nearby, using that phone to send messages to Michelle's family, her friends, even her ex. "I'm okay. Just need a break." Each text a performance, written by a killer, pretending to be the girl she destroyed. But the mask couldn't hold. When police searched Giselle's apartment, they found it all. A pair of sneakers by the door, Michelle's blood on the soles. Inside Michelle's Honda, Giselle's hair tangled on the seat fabric, and on the steering wheel, her DNA. Still, what they found next was worse. Her laptop, her private search history, how to cause a heart attack quietly, how to follow someone without being seen. Can carbon monoxide kill fast? What poisons leave no trace? This wasn't panic. It wasn't impulse. It was education. One detective later said, "When we opened that laptop, we realized we weren't looking at a random act of violence. We were staring at a step-by-step guide to murder. Everything lined up. The stolen hospital badge, the staged messages, the careful planning. It wasn't rage, it was design." On September 7th, 2011, officers surrounded her home. Giselle opened the door quietly. No fight, no tears, just one question. Did you find her? At that time, they hadn't. But the ground would soon give up its secret. 10 days later, the search teams returned to the hills east of San Francisco Bay. Rugged, empty, wind howling through dry grass. They'd been there before, dozens of times. But that day, something felt different. A volunteer stopped near a gully. Something caught her eye. Half buried, shallow. 3 months after Michelle vanished, she was finally found. Police confirmed it within hours. The remains were too decomposed to reveal exactly how she died, but dental records left no doubt. It was Michelle Lee. The family's world shattered. Her brother, Michael, said, "We prayed she was alive somewhere, fighting to come home. I guess she finally did." For months, the community had searched, refusing to give up. Now that same community filled the courtroom, demanding justice. In September 2012, the trial began. Giselle Esteban walked in wearing beige prison clothes. Her hair was neat, her eyes empty. She sat motionless through the testimonies, not a tear, not a reaction. Even when prosecutors described how she ambushed Michelle in that dark parking garage, how she lured her with lies, attacked her, then drove off in her car, Giselle just stared forward, hollow and cold. Her defense tried to claim it wasn't planned, just a moment of emotional collapse. But prosecutors weren't having it. This showed the laptop searches, the fake texts, the stolen badge. They called it what it was, premeditation. This wasn't a breakdown, the prosecutor said. It was a blueprint. Michelle's brother took the stand, his voice breaking as he said, "She wanted to heal people. Someone stole that from her." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge looked shaken. And then came the verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Giselle didn't blink, didn't cry. When reporters later asked for her reaction, she said quietly, "If I were on the jury, I'd have found me guilty too." The judge, a man who'd seen decades of horror, called it one of the most disturbing cases of his career. He sentenced her to 25 years to life. 2 families destroyed, one by jealousy, one by loss. After the trial, Michelle's family family didn't let grief consume them. They turned it into movement, launching foundations, joining missing persons groups, speaking for victims who never made it home. Michael said he found comfort in one thought, that his sister was finally at peace, reunited with their mother, both watching over them. He said, "That's what helps me sleep now." When the gavel fell and the courtroom emptied, there was no celebration. Justice had spoken, but peace. Peace was still a long way off, because when someone like Michelle Lee is taken, the echo doesn't fade. It lives in every family photo, every empty chair, every quiet moment when her loved ones still expect to hear her voice. Her story wasn't just about a crime. It was about the quiet corrosion of jealousy, how it eats away at reason, turning friendship into fixation, and fixation into something monstrous. Giselle's rage didn't appear overnight. It grew in silence, behind polite smiles and half-truths. It wore a mask that looked human until it didn't. And that's what makes Michelle's story so terrifying. Evil doesn't always come kicking down the door. Sometimes it parks right beside you. Sometimes it calls you friend. But if darkness hides in the ordinary, so does light. Michelle's family refused to let her story end in fear. They built something from the wreckage, foundations for missing persons, support for grieving families, a voice for those who never get to speak again. They turned pain into purpose, grief into grace, and maybe that's Michelle's final gift to the world. A reminder that love doesn't vanish. It endures, that memory can outlive the monster that tried to silence it. Because in every name spoken, in every search continued, in every act of kindness done in her memory, she's still here. Michelle Lee's story reminds us that evil often hides in the ordinary, but that courage, compassion, and remembrance will always burn brighter. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. And more importantly, stay sharp, stay vigilant, because sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that start with a smile.